This question comes from a user who apparently hates boats or really loves parking lots. They ask, what if we paved the entire ocean? The first problem you're going to run into is that concrete is heavier than water. If you just pour it in, you don't get a parking lot. You get a very expensive, very smooth seabed. So, for this to work, we have to assume we're building a floating concrete shell. Maybe we use pontoon supports, or we mix the concrete with aerogel, or we just suspend the laws of physics for a bit. Let's assume we manage to get a slab 1 meter thick to float on the surface. The ocean covers about 360 million square kilometers. To cover that with a 1 meter slab, you would need 360,000 cubic kilometers of concrete. For context, the entire world produces about 4.4 billion tons of concrete per year. At that rate, it would take us roughly 200,000 years to pave the Atlantic and Pacific. That's a bit too slow. So let's say we repurpose the entire global economy to produce nothing but concrete. We stop making cars, phones, and food, and just grind up mountains to make cement. If we ramped production up by a factor of 1,000, we could finish the job in a few centuries. But let's fast forward to the day the last truck pours the last load. Congratulations! You have created the world's largest, flattest surface. You can now drive from Los Angeles to Tokyo in a straight line. It would take you about 100 hours in highway speeds, assuming you brought enough gas. But you probably won't make it that far, because by capping the ocean, you've just broken the water cycle. The ocean provides the vast majority of the water vapor that turns into rain. With the lid on, evaporation stops. Clouds vanish. Rain ceases. Within a few weeks, the continents would begin to dry out. Rivers would run dry because they aren't being replenished by rain. Global agriculture would collapse almost immediately. The earth would turn into a giant, dusty desert. And it gets worse. Marine plants like phytoplankton produce between 50 and 80% of the world's oxygen. By covering them up, you've cut off their sunlight. They die, and the oxygen supply begins to drop. Under the slab, the ocean turns into a stagnant, oxygen-deprived tomb. Anything that breathes is dead. However, anaerobic bacteria, the kind that don't need oxygen, would thrive. They would feast on the decaying organic matter and pump out massive amounts of hydrogen sulfide. Hydrogen sulfide smells like rotten eggs and is extremely toxic. So the few humans surviving on the surface, fighting over canned beans in a global desert, would eventually be greeted by noxious gas seeping up through the expansion joints of your parking lot. So, if we paved the ocean, we would spend centuries of labor to create a dry, suffocating, smelly wasteland. But on the bright side, you'd finally be able to find a parking spot at the beach. So, if you have your own crazy, out-of-this-world question, drop it in the comments and subscribe so we can both dissect it in the next video.